Welcome to Mr. R's art class. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Thumbs, subs, and ring that bell. In this video, I'm going to show you how to find the center point of your piece of paper, no matter what size you're working with. You could follow these same rules to find the center point of your piece of paper. And so what we're going to do is you're going to need a ruler. And I have my piece of paper here in front of me horizontally. It's longest from left to right. And so I'm lining up my zero. Zero is that first black mark on the left-hand side of my ruler. Zero is that first black mark. That's lined up with the left side of my paper. And I'm measuring the length of this piece of paper. The length of this piece of paper is 11 inches. And all you have to do is you need to find half of whatever the length of your piece of paper is. So half of 11 would be 5.5. So you're finding 5, and then the half-inch mark there, the half-inch mark is 2/4, so one medium-sized mark, and then that second medium-sized mark. Okay, and then you're sliding your ruler to the top. 0 is that first black mark on your ruler. That needs to be lined up with the left-hand side, and then you're measuring the length of this piece of paper, which is 11 inches. So again, half of 11 inches is 5.5. Okay, so no matter what your length is, you're just dividing that by 2. So if I had a big sheet of paper and it was 18 inches, half of 18 inches would be 9. Okay, so but this is just a standard sheet of paper, which is 11 inches. And I just need to find half of 11, which is 5.5. Then you're going to line up those two marks there. You're just lining them up. You're not going to draw a line straight across. You just kind of need to roughly find where the center is. So roughly the center is around here somewhere with those two marks lined up. So line up those two marks and then just kind of roughly draw a line between those two marks. Then we're going to rotate our paper. Still using our ruler here. Lining up the 0 with the left-hand side of our piece of paper. And we're measuring the length of this again. So the length this way on the standard sheet of paper is 8.5. So half of 8.5 is 4.25. 4.25, right down here. 4.25. So quarter is that medium-sized mark, right? But it's not the distance, it's not the halfway distance between the 4 and the 5. It's that first medium-sized mark there. That's a quarter. Then we're sliding our ruler to the top, doing the same thing up here. Line up your 0 with the left-hand side. We're measuring the distance, and we're cutting that by 2. We're dividing that by 2. So the distance of this is 8.5. Half of 8.5 is 4.25. Okay, then we're lining up those two marks. Again, we're lining them up, but we're not drawing a line straight across. We are just basically kind of roughly figuring out where half of this is. So where those two marks intersect, that is where your center point of your piece of paper is. So right there, and those crosshairs, right in the center of those crosshairs there, that's the center of a piece of paper. So you're just finding the height and the length of your piece of paper, and you're dividing that by 2. Okay, so if you have any questions, go ahead and let me know. So once you have the center of the paper, I'm going to go ahead and grab a compass. Now this first ring that I'm going to make is going to be at 3.5 inches. At 3.5 inches. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the needle of this compass, and I'm just going to go ahead and place the needle, and notice how I'm going to be rotating the paper, and I'm putting a little bit more pressure on the needle than I am on the pencil. And I'm going to go around this a few times just so you're able to see it here on the camera. Okay, then my next measurement is going to be at 2 inches. At 2 inches here. Same thing, I'm going to go ahead and put the needle on the middle of the paper. Notice how I have my thumb on the pencil, and then the metal part of the compass is going to stay at the center of this mandala, at the center of the paper. And I'm going to go around a couple times just so you're able to see it here on the camera. You should only really have to go around here only maybe once. And then my last measurement is going to be at 1 inches. 1 inches here. Okay. And so my original measurement was 3.5. So I'm going to go back to 3.5. And I have these points here where we made the center of the paper. And I'm going to put my ruler just under where those lines are, where those marks are, where we made those marks. And I'm going to go from one side of this mandala to the other side. So again, this is the same measurement that we did to make this outer circle for this mandala. And I'm going to take that same measurement, which was 3.5. I'm going to put my needle, instead of at the center of this mandala, I'm going to put this needle just under the mark that we did for the center of the paper on the sides. And I'm going to go from one side of the circle to the other side of the paper. It's going to get close to the center. And from this mark here that I made, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm not increasing the size of my compass. I'm not changing the measurement on my compass. I'm keeping it exactly the same. So I'm going to go around all the way around here with that same measurement. And what's going to happen is that these leaves here are going to develop naturally. So again, I'm just putting my compass where that previous line was that I made. And I'm going to keep putting the needle on the next line. So this is the mark that I was just at. And I made a second leaf. Then I'm going to put my needle on this mark that I made. Okay, and I'm going to keep moving my pencil around. Alright, so we went all the way around, and we were able to make 6 different leaves here. And so you also have these different rings that you could play around with. So this is just a rough idea of how to start out a mandala. And you could go ahead and look at some of the examples that I have on the back table with the references and resources. So on the back table I have examples of mandalas. I have these references and resources on the back table for you to take a look at. You could look at some of these examples that they have for the different types of lines that they repeat over and over throughout this mandala. So you could look at some of these lines, some of these different types of shapes that they use to actually fill in their mandala. So you could take this basic mandala, and the more detail they add, the more intricate that they look. And again, you're just taking these lines and repeating them over and over and over inside of each and every single ring. So each ring is actually going to be a different design. So this one, for example, you have this inner ring, you have these lines that go from the outside of this mandala, from the center outward of this mandala, and then on the next ring it's just blank, and then on the next ring you have some more lines that are a little bit more spread out, and then on the next ring of this design for this mandala you actually start turning into these different petals. Then you have different types of petals. So pretend that every single design is a different ring. So every single design is a different ring, and make sure that you alternate, maybe even change the design for each ring as you move outward from the mandala. So try to have at least 10 rings for your final draft. For this rough draft on this small sheet of paper, you could just practice with maybe just 5 different rings. Once you get that basic idea down that each ring should have a different design, then I think you're ready for that final draft. That final draft should be on a big piece of paper. And again, you're practicing in each and every single one of these rings with a different design. So I'm going to take a look at these first 2 here. And in each of these rings, you could add some more rings here. So right now I only have 1, 2, 3 different rings. So you could just change the size of this compass here. And this original measurement was 1 inch. So we just need to make sure that we have something that's smaller than 1 inch. So this would be about a 1/2 inch here. Okay, so then that would be a different design there. Inside of these different leaves, you could add some of these designs. You could look at some of these designs that we have here on the references or resources. You could add some of these designs into this mandala. Right, so my inner ring is just some lines inside of some of these petals. You could decide to keep some of these petals. You could decide to get rid of some of these petals. Right, so this one is just some lines in this ring here. Then maybe inside of this second ring, I could either add a bigger petal. So inside of each of these big leaves that we drew originally, I'm going to add this design here, which would look like a petal. Then maybe even inside of that petal, you could have another layer. So maybe I could color in this inside here darker, and then this outline of this petal could maybe be left just white. And maybe you could even have a different shape between these two petals if you want. Maybe you want some smaller petals here between the space that we have. Okay, and then you could add a different design to this outer ring, to this third ring here. So we have this 1, 2, and third ring here would be a different design. And maybe you could add some of these overlapping petals here that I have on this design. So the way you would do that is you would have maybe just one small petal. Then you offset this next layer. So when I say offset, that means you start from the center of that first petal and you go outward. Then on this next petal, you start from the center and then you would have 3 here. So look at it as 1, 2, 3. So then we should maybe have 4 on this next petal, or in this next row of petals. So you start from the outside. So 1, 2, and then 3 and 4. And so you start from the centers of the row that's just below that. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So every single row that you have, you'd be able to see maybe one extra petal. So this was started out with 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can repeat that in the same row. So maybe I don't want to go through these whole leaves here. I just want to actually be able to see that petal all the way through. And then I would start this design in this next empty space here. Okay, so I have 1 there. So that means I would have 2. So 1, 2 in this next, and then in this next row. And then this one I would have 3. So I'm starting from the centers. So I'd be able to see 3. I might not be able to see the whole 3. I might just be able to see a portion of the 3. So there's 1, 2, 3. And now this next one I would see 4. So 1, 2, 3. And again, you might not be able to see the whole 4, but you might be able to see just a portion of that. So then starting from the centers of the row that was just below. And then on 5 on that one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so you repeat that process maybe all the way around. Play around with these different patterns that are on these different references and resources. Maybe replicate from one mandala example from another example. So maybe get one example from this reference or resource, get another example from this reference or resource, and kind of challenge yourself. So on this first rough draft, just kind of get the idea of how to actually use a compass with a ruler. And then on the final draft, you should have at least 10 different rows, whereas on this rough draft, I might only have 5 rows. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, so I would have to add another one here, maybe between these two. So again, start with 5 for your rough draft and then 10 for your final draft. On the final draft, I'll give you a permanent marker, I'll give you a thin permanent marker and a wider permanent marker, and that'll help some of those details stand out from the piece of paper. So if you have any questions of how to use the compass, how to use a ruler, how to evenly divide your mandala, go ahead and let me know. Thank you for watching the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And feel free to watch any of the other related videos.